Welcome back, Norah's chapter readers. Today we begin a journey where the only thing hotter than the professional friction was the undeniable, dangerous spark burning beneath it. This is the story of Elias Thorne, the man I professionally loathed, and the terrifying realization that he was destined to be the man I'd tragically fall for. I'm Norah, and 4 months ago, my world was a tidy sequence of spreadsheets and perfectly executed deadlines. It was ordered, predictable, and safe. Then Elias Thorne walked in, and everything shattered. He wasn't just a CEO. He was a force of nature dressed in a $1,000 suit, his very presence an accusation. He was infuriatingly beautiful. Let's not pretend otherwise. His suits were tailored nightmares that somehow managed to emphasize the brutal lines of his shoulders and the dangerous intensity in his stance. And those eyes, Atlantic storm gray, perpetually assessing, eternally judging. They never softened, especially not when they landed on me. Our war was fought over the Harmony Initiative. This project wasn't just a notch on my CV. It was personal. The chance to give back to the very community that once sheltered me. I saw life-changing impact. Elias Thorne saw a weak Q3 projection. The first major confrontation was a massacre. I'd presented my budget, detailed and heartfelt, designed to maximize human connection. He'd torn it to shreds right there in the boardroom, his voice a low, gravelly monotone that somehow sounded louder than shouting. "This is poetry, Miss Hayes." He'd sneered, tapping my proposal with a pen like it was contaminated. "We are in the business of assets, not aspirations. Your budget allocation for emotional support staff is appalling. Trim it by 60%. Find the efficiency or find another job." The injustice of it hit me like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat. I looked at him, not just my boss, but the embodiment of corporate greed, his face utterly devoid of empathy. Hate. That's what I felt. Pure electric, soul-deep hate. "Efficiency isn't always about cutting costs, Mr. Thorne," I managed, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "Sometimes it's about maximizing human potential. You wouldn't understand. You only see numbers." He actually paused, his eyes narrowing, studying me like an insect under a microscope. "Is that a challenge, Hayes? Because in this office I set the parameters." That day, the atmosphere between us curdled into something thick and volatile. Every meeting became a chess match, every interaction a subtle power play. I worked harder, slept less, fueled only by the sheer, desperate desire to prove Elias Thorne wrong. I wanted to see that icy mask crack just once. But the universe, I'm convinced, has a sick sense of humor. Because a week later, the Harmony Initiative hit a massive, unexpected roadblock. A legal injunction that threatened to derail the whole project. I was frantic, pacing my apartment at midnight, trying to find a loophole. Then my phone buzzed. An email from the devil himself. Subject, urgent. Destination, Geneva. The email was stark. "Hayes, we leave 6 a.m. tomorrow. Private jet. You and I are fixing this. No excuses. No delays." Thorne. My heart plummeted straight into my stomach. Geneva? A private jet? Alone with him? This wasn't professional collaboration. This was a sentence. I stared at the screen, the sudden terrifying realization dawning. I was about to be trapped across an ocean with the one man I hated more than anything, the man whose stormy gaze made my carefully constructed self-control tremble. But even worse than the fear was the tiny, traitorous tremor that ran through me. A flicker of wicked anticipation. Because even though I hated him, I knew, with the certainty of a prophecy, that this forced proximity was going to be the undoing of one of us. I had to go. The project, my principles, everything was at stake. But as I started packing, the memory of his cold, intense stare flashed in my mind, and I knew. This trip wouldn't just save a project. It would either save me or destroy me. What did Elias Thorne really want from me, stranded thousands of miles from the safety of the office? The cab ride to the executive terminal was a blur of early morning anxiety. I was running on 3 hours of sleep and a dangerous cocktail of determination and dread. The mere idea of spending the next 72 hours in the contained space of a private jet, and then a foreign city with Elias Thorne, felt less like a business trip and more like a psychological experiment designed to break me. When I arrived at the hangar, the jet wasn't just a jet. It was a sleek black predator crouched on the tarmac, expensive and silently menacing. And waiting at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the rising sun, was Elias. He wore a charcoal suit that looked like it had been molded onto his body, and his expression was as unreadable as ever. "You're 5 minutes late, Hayes," he stated, his voice a low, rough rumble that somehow amplified the silence of the massive hangar. "My apologies, Mr. Thorne," I managed, my voice clipped. I wasn't aware the fate of the Harmony Initiative hinged on a single 5-minute window. He didn't dignify that with a response, only swept his arm toward the cabin entrance, a gesture of imperious command. The air around him was cold, clean, and dominated by a scent of expensive sandalwood and power. The interior of the jet was pure luxury. Cream leather, dark wood, and absolute quiet. It was far too intimate. There were 4 massive seats arranged in a square, but the whole space felt like a gilded cage built just for the two of us. We settled across from each other. I opened my laptop, trying to project a focused professionalism I didn't feel. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable, punctuated only by the subtle hum of the jet engines spooling up. Every time I looked up, those gray eyes were on me, not exactly watching but analyzing. It made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. "Stop that," I snapped, startling myself. "Stop what, Hayes?" he asked, his tone dangerously smooth. He was looking at a financial report, his focus seemingly absolute, yet I knew he'd heard every tremor in my voice. "Stop looking at me like I'm a variable that needs to be controlled," I retorted, closing my laptop a little too forcefully. "I'm your partner on this trip, not a problem to be solved." He finally looked up, laying the report aside. His gaze was heavy, holding mine captive. "You are a problem, Hayes. A brilliant one perhaps, but certainly the most disruptive force in my company. You prioritize emotion over logic. I need you to understand that in Geneva there is no room for sentiment. We stick to the numbers or we lose everything." His proximity, the sheer weight of his presence, was suffocating. I felt the familiar burn of frustration, but underneath it, a terrifying awareness was sparking. The heat of anger mingling with something else, something I refused to name. Hours passed. We worked in charged silence, the jet crossing continents, speeding through time zones. I was reviewing the injunction documents when I saw it, a tiny, almost imperceptible detail in the travel itinerary the flight attendant had left on my side table. The hotel booking. My gaze snagged on the reservation details for the Hotel Bovich, Thorne, and Hayes Inn. Room type, executive suite. 1 room. My pen clattered onto the polished table. "Mr. Thorne, what is this?" I hissed, holding up the itinerary. He glanced at it, completely unfazed. "The booking details. What about them? 1 room. An executive suite. There's only one, Elias." I stopped myself, the slip of his first name sounding like a gunshot in the cabin. His lip twitched. Not a smile, but a hint of something darker. "Excellent observation, Norah. Yes, 1 suite. I absolutely will not share a room with you." My cheeks were burning, a mix of pure outrage and a mortifying flash of unwelcome heat. "Relax, Hayes. It's a 2-bedroom suite, obviously. The key is in the details. The opposition is watching us closely. They want to find any weak point, any sign of internal conflict. Booking separate accommodation would signal division. We need to project absolute, unified control. We are a team, a very close team for the next 3 days. Is that understood?" His explanation was infuriatingly logical, rooted in the high-stakes corporate espionage of billion-dollar deals. But the truth was, the thought of him just feet away from me behind a closed door was a dangerous distraction. He had planned this, calculated this proximity, and it made me feel completely powerless. Later that evening, after landing and being whisked to the elegant, imposing hotel, the tension peaked. We were in the massive, breathtaking suite. Elias immediately claimed the main bedroom. I was settling into the smaller one, trying to ignore the sound of his footsteps nearby, when he came to my door, holding a single, crisp manila folder. "Hayes, review this immediately. It's the opposition's primary asset document. We need to be able to counter it within the hour." I took the folder, but as my fingers brushed his, the current between us was undeniable, a shock of warmth that made me gasp. He pulled his hand back instantly, his gray eyes darkening like smoke. "Look at the document, Norah," he commanded, his voice suddenly husky, strained. He was fighting something, I could see it now. A tightening around his jaw, a flicker of vulnerability in his guarded eyes. I opened the folder. It wasn't an asset document. It was a single, highly confidential printout. It listed the true, private ownership of the entire hotel chain we were staying in. The name at the top of the document was not Thorne and Company. It was Elias Thorne Private Assets. Total valuation $9.5 billion. My breath hitched. The entire hotel. All of this. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. Norah, he whispered, his voice dangerously low, using my name again. You wanted to know why I'm so obsessed with control? You wanted to know why I look at you the way I do. He was close enough now that I could feel the heat radiating off him. Smell the expensive sandalwood. He leaned in, his eyes locked on mine, and for the first time, the icy professional mask was completely gone, replaced by a raw, desperate intensity. Look at the number, Norah. That money, it's not just a balance sheet. It's a target. And now that you know who I really am, you're standing right in the crosshairs with me. The world thinks I'm just a CEO. If they find out who I really am, the secret behind the suit, they won't come for my company. They'll come for the people closest to me. You're right here. What are you going to do now that you know your cold, heartless boss is a ticking time bomb, and you're the one sitting next to the trigger? The air in that suite was instantly sucked out, leaving me gasping, paralyzed by the sheer weight of the truth. $9.5 billion. It wasn't just money. It was another universe. And the man who owned it, the man who had just confessed that knowing this secret made me a target, was standing so close I could feel the sharp inhale of his breath. You're a billionaire, I whispered, the word tasting foreign and impossible on my tongue. My gaze darted from the asset report back to his face. The cold, impenetrable Elias Thorne I knew was gone, replaced by a man whose eyes were filled with a haunted, desperate energy. Keep your voice down, Norah, he warned, his tone rough, his eyes scanning the luxurious suite as if the walls had ears. He reached out, his long fingers closing around my wrist, pulling me further into the smaller bedroom, away from the main living area. The heat of his touch was like a brand, searing away the remaining shreds of my composure. This is not a game, he stated, his voice now a low, fierce murmur meant only for me. And you cannot tell a soul. Not a single soul, not even in jest. Do you understand the kind of attention that number attracts? The kind of people who operate in the shadows? They don't want a ransom, they want the control, the assets, the power. And if they can't get to me, they use leverage. He let go of my wrist, but the warmth lingered, an unwelcome reminder of his physicality. That's why I'm ruthless, Hayes. That's why I prioritize efficiency. Because every cent I lose, every distraction I entertain, is a weakness they can exploit. Thorne and Company is a legitimate, large company. Elias Thorne, the $9.5 billion private asset holder, is a protected secret. It's my shield. His explanation wasn't an apology, but a stark, terrifying admission of vulnerability. And suddenly, the ice around my heart began to fracture. The man I had labeled a soulless automaton wasn't heartless. He was terrified. He was a king hiding in plain sight, living under the crushing weight of a target painted on his back. And you brought me here, I said, my voice rising again, fueled by betrayal. You put me next to that target? Why? If I'm such a liability? He looked away then, running a hand through his dark hair, an almost feral gesture that completely undid his buttoned-up CEO persona. Because the Harmony Initiative is the only thing that's ever slipped past my defenses, he confessed, the words strained, ripped from him against his will. The project is legitimate, and the legal challenge is real. I need you, Norah. I need your passion, your human perspective, your absolute commitment to saving it. You see things I deliberately trained myself not to see. He turned back, his gaze burning into mine. And yes, I brought you close because out here I can protect you better. I can control the environment. I know where you are at all times. The confession stole my breath. He needed me. Not just my work, but me. The chaotic, emotional mess he claimed to despise. And the idea that he was actively trying to protect me, the enemy, was a contradiction that melted the last of my resolve. We stood there, just inches apart, the air charged with unspoken words and the terrifying hum of his secret. The line between hate and something much more volatile was blurring into a dangerous electric haze. "I still think your business methods are cruel," I whispered, my eyes involuntarily dropping to his lips. "And I still think your methods are reckless," he countered, his voice barely a breath. His gaze mirrored mine, fixed on my mouth. "But if this injunction succeeds, the charity centers fail. And the people who are counting on us lose everything. We have to work together, Norah. No more enemies. For 72 hours we are a single unified front." He raised a hand, his touch impossibly light as he brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek. The contact was excruciating, a sweet, agonizing pressure that made my entire body tighten. I leaned into it, desperate for more. "I'm scared, Elias," I admitted, the secret fear escaping before I could stop it. He closed the distance between us, his chest brushing mine. I could feel the solid, dangerous strength of him, the rapid beat of his heart echoing my own frantic rhythm. "Don't be," he murmured, his thumb stroking my jawline. "I won't let anything happen to you. Not while you're with me." And then his gaze dropped completely, focusing entirely on my lips. The silence became deafening. I forgot the Harmony Initiative, the asset report, the billions, the danger. All I saw was him. The need in his eyes, the suppressed desire that was mirroring the overwhelming longing radiating from my own body. His head began to descend, slow, deliberate, giving me every chance to retreat, every chance to push him away. But my hands, traitorous and weak, lifted, not to push, but to tentatively grasp the lapels of his perfect suit. Just as his lips were a breath away from mine, just as the tension was so sharp I thought I would combust, a sudden loud, persistent knocking thunders on the suite's main door. The sound is startling, violent, shattering the moment. Elias instantly recoiled, his face snapping back into the cold, hardened mask of the ruthless CEO. He didn't look back at me. His eyes were wide, scanning the room. "They found us," he ground out, his voice sharp with terror. He grabbed my arm, yanking me behind him. "Stay silent, Norah. No matter what happens, do not let them know you're here." The knocking wasn't polite. It was demanding, aggressive. It echoed in the vast, silent suite, each beat a hammer blow against my chest. "They found us." Elias's words replayed in my mind, cold and terrifying. This wasn't a business competitor looking for an invoice. This was something far more dangerous. Elias shoved me back, silently urging me into the small walk-in closet attached to the minor bedroom. He didn't lock the door. It would have made too much noise. Instead, he wedged a heavy, antique luggage stand against the base, just enough to catch if someone tried to rush it. "Not a sound," he mouthed, his gray eyes blazing with a fierce, protective intensity one had never seen directed at me. It was terrifying and yet completely mesmerizing. He then moved with the stealth of a predator, crossing the room to the main door. I could hear the muffled, rapid voices through the thick wood of the door. A harsh foreign language I didn't recognize, laced with undeniable menace. I pressed myself into the furthest corner of the closet, surrounded by the scent of cedar and his expensive custom-made shirts. I could hear his exchange with the people outside. His voice was cool, authoritative, and completely devoid of the panic I knew he must be feeling. "The suite is occupied," Elias stated in flawless, measured French, his voice projecting just enough command to sound annoyed, not threatened. "I suggest you return in the morning. I am a private client." There was a moment of silence, then a sharp, brutal retort I didn't understand. The tone was chilling. Elias's reply was sharp, almost a snarl. "I don't care who sent you. Leave now." The voices outside turned into a muffled shouting match, escalating rapidly. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought they would hear it. Then I heard it, the undeniable sickening sound of something heavy hitting the door, followed by the terrifying scrape of a lock being manipulated. Panic. Pure icy panic seized me. I wanted to scream, to rush out, to tell him to run. And then the sound of the main door being violently forced open. Elias reacted instantly. I heard a muffled, explosive struggle, a grunt, the crashing of furniture, and then silence. A terrifying, heavy silence. I bit down on the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper, praying he was okay. Then the footsteps. They were heavy, measured, moving through the suite, checking the living area. The footsteps paused just outside my closet door. I could hear the men breathing raggedly, heavily. My vision tunneled. The air in the closet was suffocating. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to become utterly invisible. The luggage stand scraped loudly against the marble floor as the closet door was wrenched open. I gasped, bracing myself. But it wasn't the shadowy figures. It was Elias. He was leaning heavily on the door frame, his immaculate white shirt ripped at the shoulder, a thin line of blood trickling down his temple. He was breathing hard, his gaze frantic. "Norah, get up. Now. We can't stay here," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "They're still in the hallway, covering the perimeter. I bought us 30 seconds. He grabbed my hand, pulling me out into the small bedroom. His grip was fiercely strong, conveying a desperate urgency that transcended any professional boundary. He didn't take me toward the main door or the hallway. Instead, he dragged me to the large window overlooking the bustling, neon-lit streets of Geneva. "Don't look down. Don't think," he commanded, his voice tight. "Elias, what?" Before I could finish, he unlatched the heavy security lock on the window and threw it open. He grabbed the heavy, decorative curtain cord, wrapped it around his hand, testing the weight. "This suite is famous for its elaborate security features," he hissed, his eyes darting back to the bedroom door. "It's built for discreet exits. But this is the riskiest one." He looked at me, his eyes full of a raw apology. "I need you to trust me, Norah. Completely. If you hesitate, we both fall. We're going down to the balcony below." I looked out. It was 3 stories down, but the way he spoke, the sheer desperation in his face, told me staying here was a death sentence. The men outside were still in the suite. I could hear their low voices searching the rooms. "I trust you," I said, the words a terrified vow. I didn't know why I trusted the man who had only ever given me cold, professional contempt, but in that moment he wasn't my boss. He was the only barrier between me and certain danger. He tied the cord securely around a heavy structural support and looked me in the eyes, his face inches from mine. "I go first. Follow exactly how I tell you. No sudden movements." He didn't wait for a response. He swung one leg out the window, then the other, and with a controlled, terrifying grace, he began to descend, using the curtain cord as a makeshift rope. I watched him go, my breath caught in my throat. When he reached the balcony below, he gave me a sharp upward nod. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I gripped the cord. I swung my leg over the sill, looking down for a fleeting, sickening moment. The height was dizzying. As I started to slide, my foot slipped. A sharp, terrified cry escaped my lips. I felt the skin on my palms burning against the rough cord. For a second, I was completely weightless, falling. Then a massive, powerful jolt of resistance. Elias, who had been waiting below, surged upward, catching the slack in the cord with his body weight. He anchored me. "I have you, Norah. Hold on," his voice roared, a desperate, guttural sound that sliced through the panic. Slowly, painfully, I slid down. When my feet finally hit the floor of the balcony below, I collapsed into him, sobbing, shaking uncontrollably. The feel of his arms wrapping around me, strong, unyielding, alive, was the most profoundly comforting sensation I had ever known. He held me against his chest, cradling the back of my head, whispering rough, soothing French phrases into my hair. The professional distance, the cold control, the layers of billions, they had all been stripped away. In the face of shared trauma and near death, we were just 2 terrified people, bound by an impossible secret. "We need to go," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. But he didn't move. He just held me tighter, his face buried in my hair. I looked up at him. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, a desperate, raw relief. His eyes locked on mine. He wasn't assessing a project. He was seeing me, the real vulnerable me. And the look he gave me was utterly devastating. It was possessive. It was hungry. He lowered his head, and this time there was no hesitation, no stopping. His mouth crushed against mine, a desperate, consuming kiss that tasted of fear, adrenaline, and undeniable pent-up desire. It was brutal, urgent, and everything I never knew I wanted from him. But before the kiss could deepen, a blinding light sliced across the balcony from the hotel grounds below, accompanied by the shriek of a police siren. "They're covering the exits," Elias gasped, pulling away, his eyes wide and panicked. "We have to split up. Meet me at the Pont du Mont Blanc in an hour." Don't look back. Don't trust anyone. He shoved me toward the nearest fire escape door, leaving me alone, heart hammering, kissed senseless, and forced to run into the streets of a strange city with a secret that could get me killed. Geneva at midnight became a labyrinth of confusing streets and blinding lights. I ran, fueled only by adrenaline and the raw, lingering memory of Elias's desperate kiss. Every shadow was a pursuer, every flashing light a threat. I clutched the secret asset report, his secret, his life, against my chest like a shield. Pont du Mont Blanc. 1 hour. That was my only instruction. Running toward a bridge in a foreign city, I realized the full absurdity of my life. I was running from men who wanted to ruin a billionaire who just moments ago had risked his life to save mine. When I finally reached the bridge, exhausted and shaking, the air was sharp and cold. The lights of the city glittered on the dark water, but all I could focus on was the empty expanse of the massive bridge. He wasn't there. Doubt, sharp and cruel, began to pierce through the adrenaline high. Had he just used the panic to escape, leaving me to fend for myself? Was the kiss just an adrenaline response? Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a shadow detached itself from the granite structure beneath the bridge. Elias. He emerged slowly, his movements cautious, his clothes now dirty and torn from the escape. The sight of him, alive, whole and rushing toward me, made a choked sob catch in my throat. He didn't say a word. He just closed the distance between us in 2 quick strides and crushed me into his chest. It wasn't the urgent, terrified embrace from the balcony. This was different. This was claiming. His arms were rigid, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe, and I clung to him just as fiercely, burying my face in the scratchy wool of his damaged suit. You came, I whispered into his chest. I told you I would protect you, Norah, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. I couldn't leave you. Never. In that moment, standing on the cold, lonely bridge, I knew my hate for him was a lie I could no longer maintain. All the cold walls I had built around my heart crumbled. The billion-dollar secret, the cold CEO facade. It was just armor for a deeply wounded, intensely protective man. We spent the remaining hours working in a derelict cafe, fueled by cheap coffee and the desperate need to finish the Harmony Initiative counterproposal. The proximity was different now. It was collaborative, charged with an undercurrent of deep intimacy. He would lean over my shoulder, pointing out fiscal adjustments, and the casual brush of his arm against mine felt like an electric current running through the entire room. We were 2 halves of a whole, combining his ruthless logic with my empathetic passion. The next morning, we walked into the high-stakes meeting with the legal team that had issued the injunction. Elias was back in his tailored suit, his face a perfect, polished mask of professional control, but I knew the man underneath, the desperate, scared man who had whispered French words to me on a cold balcony. When it was our turn, Elias didn't speak a word about money. Instead, he signaled to me. I stood up and I spoke from the heart. I told them about the community, about the children, about the sheer human need. But this time, I backed every emotional appeal with the fiscal efficient structure Elias had forced me to create. I wove the logic and the passion into an undeniable tapestry of necessity. They couldn't fight it. The logic was sound, and the passion was genuine. The head of the opposition team slowly nodded. The injunction was lifted. We had won. The Harmony Initiative was safe. We stepped out of the meeting room and into the quiet hallway. The immense tension of the last 48 hours instantly lifted, replaced by a dizzying euphoria. I turned to Elias, a wide, genuine smile breaking across my face. We did it. I breathed, my voice filled with awe. A rare, devastatingly genuine smile actually touched his lips, softening the hard lines around his eyes. He reached out and gently cupped my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. The simple gesture felt more intimate than any embrace. You did it, Norah, he corrected, his gaze intense. You showed them the humanity behind the assets. You saved it. His eyes dropped to my mouth, and the unspoken desire between us was a physical weight. The professional boundary was permanently incinerated. We had seen each other at our most vulnerable, most desperate, and most triumphant. Now what? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The project is safe. The danger. Is it over? He hesitated, his thumb pausing its movement. That tiny pause was more alarming than any threat. He looked at me with a profound sadness, the full weight of his secret crashing back down. The immediate danger, yes. The injunction, yes, he confirmed. He took a deep breath and the cold CO mask began to slide back into place, harder than before. But Norah, you know my secret. You know the price of proximity. I can't ask you to stand next to that target forever. I won't do that to you. He slowly, agonizingly took a step back, breaking the electrifying contact. My heart lurched, slamming against my ribs. What are you saying, Elias? I'm saying that you saved the project and now you have the leverage, the respect, and the opportunity you deserve, he stated, his voice now dangerously level, completely devoid of the warmth from the bridge. You are too precious to expose to my world. You are going back to headquarters on the next flight. You will be promoted to director of the Harmony Initiative. You will have everything you wanted. Tears sprang to my eyes. But what about us? What about everything that just happened? He clenched his jaw, his eyes blazing with a conflict he couldn't hide. What happened, he ground out, was a crisis, a necessary collaboration. It ends here. I won't risk losing you, Norah. The only way to guarantee your safety is to push you as far away as possible. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small heavy velvet box. My breath hitched, my mind racing through 1,000 impossible romantic scenarios. Was he proposing? Admitting he couldn't live without me? He opened the box, revealing a flawless, brilliant diamond necklace that must have been worth a small fortune. But he didn't offer it to me. He held it up, a devastatingly beautiful cold object. This is the cost, Norah, he whispered, his eyes distant, fixed on a point over my shoulder. I need you to forget the billionaire. Forget the chaos. Forget the kiss. The only way you survive me is if you accept the promotion, take the life you earned and never look back. I'll be watching. From a distance. Now go. And never speak of this again. I mean it. He didn't wait for my answer. He turned on his heel and walked away, disappearing into the crowded hallway, leaving me alone with the staggering weight of the diamond and the agonizing knowledge that the man who hated me had saved my life and then shattered my heart, all to protect me. And there I stood, alone, on foreign soil, with the promotion I always dreamed of, and the crushing knowledge that the only way to have the man I loved was to defy him completely. He gave me the career. He gave me the safety. But he took the one thing I now truly wanted, him. He thinks a diamond necklace and an executive title can buy my silence. He thinks he can hide his heart behind billions and an invisible target. He is wrong. This isn't just about the Harmony Initiative anymore. This is about fighting for the man beneath the monster. This is about proving to Elias Thorne that I am worth the risk, and that our love is stronger than his fear. Thank you so much for listening to the first chapter of my story. My boss is a secret billionaire. Workplace romance, enemies to lovers. I know that ending was agonizing, but the fight is only just beginning. If you are as angry and heartbroken as I am right now, and you need to know if Norah accepts the diamond or goes back to fight for her happy ending, make sure you subscribe to Norah's chapter and hit that notification bell, so you don't miss a single moment of the drama. I promise you, part 2 will be a battle for the heart. Stay tuned. The story continues soon.